Welcome to SF Commercial Property Conversations with Bruce Bean, where Bay Area investments meet expert insights. Get ready to unlock the strategies of commercial real estate success.
Today we have Ravi Jagtiani with us, and he has a very interesting path to commercial real estate and working with daycare. So, Ravi, it's great to have you on. If you could just give us a little history, it would be great to hear how you got basically from Mumbai to Silicon Valley and working on daycares.
Thank you. So my journey is a little different from the average Indian that comes to the US, right? I came in search of peace more so than money. My background back in India has been my dad was a hotelier and a restaurant owner back in Mumbai, very successful in his career. And then when I first came to the US, I mean, I've been coming since childhood, but when I came here for a long term first was when I went to college in Babson College in Massachusetts. And I graduated in economics and entrepreneurship in 2003. And I went back to India to join the family business, basically. So when I went back, the first thing I asked my dad was, "Hey, you called me back. You didn't let me take a job in the US. What am I doing here? Am I joining your restaurant business, your hotel business, or something else?" So interestingly enough, he was a big believer of real estate. So when he was in his great days in the business, every almost 90% of his income went back into real estate. So he kept acquiring different pieces of real estate and a lot of land as well. But he never did anything with the land. It was just, acquired and kept, right? He didn't have the time to, develop it because he was technically not a developer himself. Uh, so when I went back, he said, "No, I don't want you to be in the restaurant business. That is doing okay, and I may not even want you to be there. We may just, rent it out or close it. I want you to focus on your on this land that we've bought for so many years. All these years we've been acquiring. Just go ahead and develop that, and you will do just fine." So I got right into development soon after reaching India, straight from graduation, and spent good 5 or 6 years of my life in India, back in India, developing mixed use projects for my family. And then while I was doing that, we did decide India is always growing over the last couple of decades now. It's a growing economy. So we decided to keep most of the retail in the mixed use that we developed and then obviously sell off the condos on top. So a lot of those retails that we did manage to keep it back was obviously kept and is earning cash flow for us over the last since they have been developed. So that was my journey into real estate. And then I lost my dad. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2007. And from there on, over the next 2 3 years, I decided not to continue living in India for different reasons. It's a tough place out there. So we came back to the US as a family. And then once I was here, obviously, we were in the technology world in Silicon Valley. So the tech bug has to bite, at some point to it, right? So that's exactly what happened to me. I joined a tech startup and basically was with them for about 2 years. I thought I would enjoy it, but I honestly did not. It's a tough world. And I just said that, it's better that I focus more on my core competencies and what I'm good with. So I decided to get my real estate license and then join Intero. Intero being predominantly residential, I first, for the first 6 months, dabbled a little bit into residential. I still do for friends and family, but very limited. Uh, but mostly then I decided to join the Intero commercial division. And initially I started focusing more on retail, shopping center, selling shopping centers, retail properties, helping a lot of Bay Area residents, divest their, be it residential properties or commercial properties here, and reinvest into higher cap rate properties in Texas and Arizona and other states. I myself and I'm an investor, so I have a decent amount of portfolio both in state and out of state myself. Uh, so I was focusing more on that until uh, and I obviously even land development. So I have a good network with developers here. I also serve on the planning commission in Foster City, so I understand land use laws, etc. Fairly good. I was a developer back in India as well, so uh, I started networking with the right developers, with the right hoteliers here, given my dad's background. And I started scouting for land, both for hospitality as well as, residential development. So I do development, and then came then suddenly I developed a niche when I got my first daycare listing in San Jose. And then that was on the market for a while because the seller was crazy enough not to accept most of the offer. I mean, many offers that were delivered. The family was in dispute whether they wanted to sell it or not. Uh,
Ah,
so that stopped the mom from accepting offers. But because it was listed for such a long time, from that one listing, I ended up getting more and more listings. And today I'm proud to say that I sell 95% of the daycares in Bay Area
wow.
and
Wow.
almost 60% in the state of California. So I have listings from here all the way through San Diego.
Oh
Uh,
my gosh.
yeah, so that's my niche now. But then I have a good team that we also focus on land and retail.
So what's the average cost of a daycare?
Depends. That's another good question that you came up with. So daycare sell at 4 times SDE, seller discretionary earnings. That's a typical standard, that they sell at. And so depending on the size, meaning the license capacity, so the smaller ones, so if you're say licensed for anywhere between 30 to 40 kids, anywhere in the prime Bay Area region, you would be selling anywhere between 450 to 600,000
Okay.
as
Yeah.
a business. If you're licensed for 80, 90, 100 kids, you're looking at about a $1.5 million valuation on the business.
Yeah.
Uh, some of them do come with the real estate, so real estate is valued separately, but a lot of them just sell the business.
Wow. So it's not a normal real estate transaction. It's a more of a business sale, right?
Right. It's also, yeah, basically business brokerage. But then some of them do come with the real estate as well. So we have two separate listings, two separate, contracts with the buyers buying the real estate separately and the business separately.
Yeah. So that makes it a little more complicated. Obviously, you don't have to deal with a liquor license like some business sales do, but that probably makes it a little easier.
Not really.
Oh.
I would say liquor license is perhaps easier compared to daycare license transfers. Uh,
Ah,
because when the daycare license transfers, the city gets again involved. So you have, even though the property is technically grandfathered in as a daycare for and running since several years, but you will redo all your fire inspections and your all kinds of stuff. So typical transaction timeline is about 5 months, 4.5 to 5 months to close escrow, if everything goes smoothly. But there are times when it's taken even longer.
so the state intervenes basically and approves the buyer
Yes.
as being capable to run this particular daycare and they have to go out and get a basically a new license, or if they're already licensed, they have to prove that they can handle this particular daycare.
Yeah, and the licenses per location, so they have to get a new license.
Oh, I see. Oh, I see.
Yeah,
So
but
every time it transfers, the new daycare buyer has to get a new license.
yes, the good thing is that transferring the license is about a 90-day process. Uh, After COVID, it's taking a little longer because staff is limited everywhere now. But say 90 to 120 days is a typical timeline for transferring the license, or rather getting a new license. But if you were to start a daycare from scratch, say you were to lease a property and start from scratch, then you're looking at a timeline of about 2 years just to get the use permit and the license.
Oh,
So,
wow.
which is
Yeah.
why people prefer buying a daycare versus dabbling into opening a new one, which is more expensive. you know.
Yeah, more expensive, more difficult. I know I've had numerous people call me about daycares and I've gone through the process a little bit and it seems like the requirements, particularly for the outside play area, always is a problem.
Yes, always.
Always. So buying an existing one is much easier.
Yes, buying an existing one means, at least the location is grandfathered in. It is already approved for the daycare, so you don't have to go through those approval processes. You don't have to go through a planning commission or a city council meeting, right? Getting those things approved or a public hearing. You are dealing with just the fire and then licensing, right? Those take anywhere between 90 to 120 days, and you're through.
So
Uh,
what if a buyer was interested and they were doing this for the first time, what would they need to qualify to become licensed?
Well, a lot of buyers are in the industry in some way or the other, meaning either they are currently daycare business owners, they're expanding, or they have some educational, like background in education, be it a teacher, in a daycare or elsewhere.
Oh, right, right.
So they already understand how to manage kids, right? There are nowadays a lot of buyers that also are getting into the space brand new. They have no background as such, right? When I ask them, interestingly enough, their answer is that, hey, I have two kids and I can manage kids,
And I
right?
want to start my own daycare.
I want to start my own daycare. But given how lucrative this industry is, right?
Mm.
It's not, and plus it's not too difficult either. Like I've had buyers who've bought a daycare 6 7 years ago, their first daycare through me, and today they own like six or seven of them.
Oh,
uh,
wow.
and when I asked them how often do you visit your daycares, they said, we barely go there once a month, right? So
Wow.
they have the right questions that they ask their staff and their director. Everything nowadays is on an app, like the in
Mm.
and out of the kids, the
Right.
everything, the payment system, everything is online. They understand what's going on in their facilities. So it's become an sort of an absentee business for a lot of people, and financially, it's a good profit margin, right? On an average, it's about 30 to 40% margins in this business. So
Wow.
it's a
So,
no-brainer.
so you don't, do you have to take some courses and do some kind of like a real estate course to get into the daycare world?
Only if you want to run it yourself and you want to be the director or the teacher.
Oh,
But if
I see.
but if you want to just continue with the existing director and teacher, so the larger facilities can afford a 60 to $70,000 salaried director, right? The smaller
Right.
ones are mostly the ones that are bought by owner operators that themselves run it. So if you're buying a smaller one and you want to run it yourself, then yes, you do need the ECE credits as a director to run it.
Oh, I see. Okay. So that has to be in place before you can get the license or get a new license for a location.
Right. And and
Is,
the and the SBA is also very aggressive in financing daycares.
oh,
You can go as low as 10% down, and get a good loan for acquiring a childcare business, because they know that it's a less risky business compared to most other businesses.
so if you're buying a daycare for 400,000 or 500,000, you could get in for 40 or $50,000.
Yes,
Wow, that's seems like a pretty good investment.
it is.
It is.
You do
So,
a cash on cash investment analysis, you're making north of 100%.
right, right, right. Yeah. So you do pretty well in the whole world of daycare. So how many of these facilities typically have real estate involved?
Oh, not many. So if
Yeah.
on an average I sell about 40 to 45 schools a year, they about two or three show up with the real estate. Not,
Oh, oh wow. Okay. So like 1% maybe something like that.
yeah,
Yeah, a small amount.
yeah.
But yeah. But aren't a lot of you don't do any trading of daycares where you sell the real estate underneath them with the kind of a triple net approach.
I do. Yeah. So a
Yeah.
lot of them come on my way as well, that the seller wants to either just retire and but in the sense, just want to liquidate some real estate part of it and just keep the business going, because they're too attached, emotionally attached to the business, or they are expanding and they need the liquid cash to go and buy another location. But and the best thing that they can think of is, liquidate the real estate and keep the business. Or, of course, there are investors that contact me that have bought the real estate, the underlying asset, right, in the past. And the daycare operator is just their tenant, and they're basically trying to now sell it also.
Yeah,
So,
as a triple net or whatever.
100%, yes.
So how hard is it to transfer the lease? Do you end up with a lease assignment, a sublease? What happens there?
Lease assignment. In most cases, it's a lease and assignment. However, if it's an SBA loan, which 90% of the cases it is, then the SBA
Oh,
requires you to have a uh, not maybe not a 10-year fixed term, but at least adding it up to 10 years, right? So you need to have either a 3+3+4 or 5+5, like 5-year plus 5-year option. So if that's not the thing remaining on the lease, then we go back to the landlord and renegotiate the lease to, make it a 10-year lease or make it a
uh,
10-year commitment.
how often does that blow up? I mean, in terms of the landlord saying, no, I don't want to keep going, or
Well, not too often, but it does happen. So we are facing that right now with one of my transactions where in Alameda, where the landlord has historically always done 2-year leases.
uh,
Uh, and they have now agreed to do a 2+2, which is again a first for them, but they don't want to do anything to do with the 10-year, right? So, which means I have to find a cash buyer. There's no way it's going to get financed by SBA. So SBA is out of the question. Now, even a cash buyer would have to be, what do you call, bold enough to acquire a business that has only 2+2 years remaining on it, right? So,
and you can't go get a hard money loan or something to,
no, I do creatively. I have the sellers, because obviously the seller is stuck. They cannot do much about it. So then I have the sellers provide a seller financing, wherein, they get some part of the purchase
oh,
sale
right.
during the close of escrow, and the rest of it would come in when the lease does renew after 2 years, right? And then they
Oh,
get
wow.
a portion of it again. So seller has to just continue remaining hooked onto the buyer because the landlord messed up the deal.
Well, I would assume that would affect the price also.
I try not to make it affect the price because I'm good with negotiations, but but it does affect the overall proceeds that the seller is getting at a time, right? So they have to wait wait it out for a couple of years to get their money all in, unless the lease doesn't renew, and then our contract states that if the lease doesn't renew, then the buyer doesn't owe you anything else,
Oh,
period.
yeah. Well, yeah, he's got, yeah, no money coming in. So, yeah, no, that makes sense. So right now you've got two listings, one in Belmont that's with the church and one in San Francisco that's with the church that you're kind of looking at putting affordable senior housing on it. So how did those particular listings come about?
So I do work with a lot of churches as well. So I have relationships with multiple churches. My initial relationship started with them as a daycare, obviously broker, because a lot of these churches house daycares in them. If you notice that, a lot of these, properties are vacant, right? Typically during the weekdays. Churches are only operating on weekends, especially only on Sundays, and daycare is needed during the weekdays. So they go and rent spaces from churches, and interestingly enough, the zoning of the church allows you to have a daycare on it. Otherwise, finding a daycare zone property is next to impossible. So, so I have been working with them to, help them, especially after COVID, when all of these religious facilities were going through tough times. I was helping them monetize their properties by, leasing some space to daycares. And with those relationships, obviously, they know me that they know my background. I have been in development. I work with a lot of land developers myself. So, and then all the new laws that passed, which makes it, I think it's SB4, if I'm not mistaken, that allows religious facilities to, build affordable housing on it. So those laws, and then the fact that my relationships with these churches helped me, sell them a story that, hey, if you're looking to offload your properties, then I can help you basically, connect the dots, right? So
So I'm curious, are churches actually expanding and buying daycares?
they're not buying daycares; they are
No.
leasing their properties to daycares.
Yeah, okay. So they're not typically out there buying other daycares.
Oh, no, no.
It's these more market rate daycare groups that are out kind of gobbling up all the daycares that are out there,
Right.
expanding. Yeah. Well, with that kind of 30 or 40% profit margin, I can see why that market is very hot right now.
Yeah, it's always been hot. There are some turbulences in the last year and a half, 2 years, with the introduction of TK program in public schools, which is stealing, taking some business away from private daycares. But I think it's going to be short-lived, to be honest, because I don't think, especially the affluent community would want to send their kids at that age to public schools, which really do not provide any education at that level, right? And then there's a timing issue also, because daycares are all the way up till 5:30, 6 p.m., and the working people cannot afford to pick their kids at like noon, or most of
Right, right.
the
Yeah.
public schools are off at noon or by 2 p.m. at the most. So
Yeah, that doesn't help. Doesn't make sense. So there's also what's it called? An in-house daycare or something like that?
in-home daycare, yes.
In-home, but you don't get involved with that, right?
Once in a while, some people are looking to sell their in-home daycares.
Oh yeah.
The challenges with that is that the buyer of that particular business has to either lease the property, or buy the property. So it has to either sell with the home itself, or it has to be leased to the new buyer. So, a lot of times, these in-home daycare people own that house and they're living in it, so it becomes a complication for them. So those transactions are typically just discussed on the phone and then never really materialize much.
Yeah, it sounds very difficult. Well,
Right.
have you ever sold a home with a home daycare in it?
Yes, yes. I have done a few of those, but
Yeah.
yeah, but those are, they come very rarely, and if they do come, then because of the complications, it just never closes. So, but I've done few of them and they have closed. So it depends on the situation.
Wow. Okay. Well, so where would people get a hold of you, Robbie?
Well, my website is www.jagtianigroup.com. That's Jagtiani, T for Tom, IANI group.com. My email is on the screen. It's rjagtiani@intero.com, or RAVI, my first name, at JAGTIANI. That's jagtianigroup.com. And my phone number is 669-226-7416. That's six
So,
six nine 226 7416.
so if you're interested in the daycare world and you want to buy or you want to sell a daycare, call Robbie. He sounds like he's the only one out there doing it or doing a large portion of it.
Yes, there are a few others doing it, but they have, out of like 4 or 5 people, they share about 10% of the market. I have 90%. So
You were the man. All right. Well, great to talk to you, and hopefully we'll talk to you down the road here.
sounds good. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you.
That's a wrap on today's journey through the SF commercial real estate scene. Ready to share your story? Visit sfcommercialconversations.com/guest. Your insights could lead the next conversation.